Congress requested this. They never gave them to Congress. They would issue subpoenas. They still didn't give them under subpoena. That is against the law. When you have a duly issued subpoena, you have to respond to it. It's not optional. That is another place where the Department of Justice can go after current federal employees.
The DOJ releasing of emails related to the 2016 tarmac meeting between Bill Clinton and then Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Comes roughly a year after a FOIA, or Freedom of Information request, and an initial denial from the FBI that any documents like these existed. Joining me now, Daniel Halper, contributing editor to the Washington Free Beacon, and Ben Kissel, political commentator and host of the podcast titled The Last Podcast on the Left. Good to see you both this morning.
Thanks for having us.
All right, Dan, I'll start with you. I mean, the initial request said that there was nothing there. And now here we have this document dump of hundreds of pages of documents. These are two different administrations, though. Does that explain the difference?
It may explain the difference. We don't actually know. It also, the first request that was denied went to the FBI. The FBI would have records on it because, of course, the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, her security detail is made up of FBI agents. So they should have records on who she's meeting with and have some conversations, as we see here that they clearly do. Why that denial was in place, that's an answer for Jim Comey and other people who were at the FBI at the time. But it is good that DOJ is releasing them now. Also, we're just learning that one of the names, one of the people on these emails and the discussions is actually Loretta Lynch herself. The Daily Caller is reporting that Loretta Lynch went by an alias, Elizabeth Carlisle, who is on this email chain. And so it's very fascinating into what may have been the pivotal, the most important moment of the last election.
Yeah, we see some discussion of talking points of coming up with how to combat the media stories on this. We also see some media traffic involving reporters here. Ben, we have a little bit from the Washington Post, one reporter saying, any chance one of you could give me a call for another, hopefully quick, conversation on this AG Clinton meeting? My editors are still pretty interested in it, and I'm hoping to put it to rest. We also have a New York Times reporter who said he was being, quote, pressed into service by his editors to write the story. They sound very hesitant either to acknowledge that it was a story or give it any airtime.
Yeah, this is just another example of people with power living in different realities than the rest of us. I mean, the fact that Bill Clinton thought that he had the right to go and meet with Loretta Lynch on the tarmac is completely ridiculous. And the fact that they swept it under the rug is appalling. This does play into the narrative that a lot of individuals who support Donald Trump have regarding the so-called deep state, regarding institutions in government wanting to undermine the President of the United States for political reasons. These documents, this new information plays well into that narrative, and at the end of the day, it's extremely damaging to the country as a whole.
Daniel, any chance that, in your opinion, this meeting was totally innocuous? They did just run into each other on the tarmac. They did talk about grandkids and golf and that kind of stuff. But it's the fact that they tried to hide it or didn't want to acknowledge it or tried to poo-poo any attention on it that turned it into something else.
Well, there's always a chance of it. I mean, it'd be ridiculous not to concede that. But the likelihood that there wasn't some discussions that, hey, you're investigating my wife who's running, you know, it seems likely that it was inappropriate. And just by virtue of having the meeting, it was inappropriate, regardless of whether or not the conversation itself was, because you shouldn't put yourself in those sort of situations and circumstances where some might think, hey, what is going on there, that this is an abuse of power and this is an abuse of in Bill Clinton's case, of his standing as a former president.
Well, and Ben, so many of these documents, ACLJ, it says in getting the response, they're so heavily redacted, portions that they think would be important to understanding exactly what happened here. They say they're going to go to federal court to get those redactions lifted. Do you think they'll have any luck, and what more do you think we might learn?
Well, it'll be a snail's pace. There's no doubt about that. They never rush to redact these sorts of things, but I don't believe that they redacted. Hopefully we can get to the truth, and we need evidence in order to find that truth, because at the end of the day, the American people are just so sick of this smoke and mirror game that's happening on a regular basis within Washington, within our government institutions. They want answers. They want the truth so they can form reasonable opinions about what's happening in the world that they pay, in the country that they pay a lot of taxes in.
Well, these Freedom of Information requests often take a long time to get fulfilled, so it is likely there'll be more of a drip of information on this story and many others like it. Daniel and Ben, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon.